They don't need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt every single one of the acts that was presented. They can pick and choose. Oh, I believe this one. I believe this one. I don't believe that one. I don't believe that one. Oh, but that one looks probably true. So they only need to pick one or two of them, and that's it.
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And he's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, your very own board-certified personal criminal defense lawyer, and you know who you are, don't you? I think you should. Anyway, today I've got my 24 karat gold shark cufflinks on, and guess what those are? What does it mean when I have those on? It means we're doing business. Today we're doing some business. We're doing the Diddy trial. Sean P. Diddler, the Diddler man, the diddliest guy that ever diddled. He's got his case is over. We're going to talk about what that means and the status of the case. And we're going to talk about the jury instructions. But before we get to that, this is brought to you by AskALawyer.com. AskALawyer.com is a very effective and cheap way to get a lawyer's opinion on your current case or whatever you got going on. So let's say you have a landlord-tenant dispute. Well, go to lawyers.com. For $49, you can get a good opinion on what you should do or not do. Usually we're telling people what not to do, to be quite frank with you. And they have lawyers, real lawyers. You know, we have a heart, and these lawyers are living, breathing human beings ready to help you for $49. You can't get any better than that. And we also have an AI component. So if you're doing your own legal research, they've got all the 50 states covered. So it's on AI. So if you have a problem like grandma does in the basement, guess what? Go to AskALawyer.com. And the reason I say that is because, you know, they come to you from the same people that brought you eForms and eSign. Very loyal sponsors to CLR Bruce Rivers, our channel that was created by our former content genius, Michael Rivers, God rest his soul. So go to AskALawyer.com, because if you don't, it's going to cost you later. All right, so let's talk about the Diddler man, P. Diddler, Sean P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Bad Boy Records and all this other shit. You know, I mean, you talk about somebody who had the world by the ponytails. I don't know what else to say. You're a billionaire, right? He's supposedly a billionaire or 100 billionaire or whatever he is. He's got a lot of dough. What are you doing? You can't take crazy out of crazy. You know, the perversion was in him all along. You just, you know, like I say, Bill Cosby, you know, I mean, there's something wrong with somebody that wants to fuck somebody that looks like they're dead. There just is. I mean, and I know there's flavors for everybody, but at the point at which your predilection is hurting others, that's where you got to draw the line. And that's where the law draws the line. So let's talk about the status of the case. There are hundreds of exhibits, 7 weeks of trial, and now we come down to where you make your money. So what kind of a brilliant defense is Diddy's team putting together? Oh, they didn't put up a defense. Guess what? When you have a criminal sexual conduct case, and it's a he said, she said case, and you only hear what she said, that's a problem. Because they only hear one narrative. You know, they did get cross-examined, right? And there were, oh, didn't you tell him that you loved him? And didn't you tell him that you were looking forward to the freakoff? Well, yeah. I mean, I had to. Because if I didn't tell him those things, he was going to beat me. And he was threatening my career, you know. So you don't have a counter narrative brought on by the defense. Now, here's the deal. The defense does not have to prove a thing. Nothing. They have no burden, okay? Anybody who brings the case has the burden. The government in this case brought the case. So like if I have a car accident case and I was hit by somebody and I want to sue somebody for my injuries, well, it's up to me. I have the burden. So the government has the burden. They're bringing the case. So the defense does not even have to call a witness, and you can't hold that against them. Or the jury can't anyway. But they kind of do a little bit. I mean, let's just be real. You know, when it's a he said, she said case, and you don't hear what he said, you're left with what she said. So the government went through and did their closing argument. Now, the defense is going to do their closing argument today, so I can't really comment exactly what they're going to say, but I'm going to tell you what they're going to say. But before we get to that, let's talk about what the government did in their closing. In the closing argument, the government, they went through and they tried to simplify things for the jury, which is what you need to do. And it's really tough to go through 7 weeks of trial and sum it up into a short presentation that's going to keep somebody's attention. You know, I tend not to go more than a half hour for my closing arguments. Very rarely do I go more than a half hour. Let's talk about the jury instructions and how that dovetails into what the government was doing. First, an enterprise existed. They have to prove that an enterprise existed. This is for RICO. And that's not going to be hard at all because you have employees, you have a structure, you have a corporation, and you have Diddy at the top telling everybody what the fuck to do. Very, very easy. 2, the enterprise was engaged in or had some effect on interstate commerce, crossing state lines. That's all they have to do. And they bringing hookers in from out of state satisfies that. 3, the defendant was associated with the enterprise. Well, it's his. It's Diddy. I mean, there's no question about that. So, and the 4th element is that that 2 or more persons reached an agreement or came to an understanding to conduct or participate in the affairs of the enterprise, directly or indirectly, through a pattern of racketeering activity, and that the defendant voluntarily joined that, either at the time or sometime later. And it's his organization. So the only question here is really, the only question for the jury is whether there was a pattern of racketeering activity. So then the 5th element is that the defendant voluntarily and intentionally joined in the agreement or understanding, either at the time it was first reached or sometime later. But I mean, the existence of the enterprise and the affairs of the enterprise and the conduct of the enterprise is all the Diddler. There was a whole bunch of racketeering activity, or they call them overt acts, actually. The one thing that you really need to know, and the jury is going to be told this in their instructions, they don't need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt every single one of the acts that was presented. They can pick and choose. Oh, I believe this one. I believe this one. I don't believe that one. I don't believe that one. Oh, but that one looks probably true. So they only need to pick 1 or 2 of them, and that's it. I mean, that's why racketeering or RICO is such a broad net, which is just crazy. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy how easy it is for the government to prove their case. These instructions I just read you came from a case that I just tried a couple months ago or a month ago. So the closing argument is so when you do, let's start at the beginning. An opening statement is when you foretell what the case is going to be about. The evidence in this case will show blah, 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 right? And so the closing argument is just the opposite of that. You can't argue in your opening, but you argue in your closing. Okay, does that make sense? The defense didn't put on a case, and like I said, you can't hold that against him. And the defendant did not testify. Big fucking surprise there that Diddler didn't testify. He was going to be absolutely filleted. So the position of and at the close of the government's case, the defense moved for a judgment of acquittal. It's a Rule 29 motion. And guess what? It went, they're almost never granted. I mean, I've had it granted, I think, 2 or 3 times in my career on very serious cases. But Diddy didn't testify, right? And I don't know how he could, honestly. I mean, he gave that, and I don't know if it came in, I'm sure it probably came in, where he gave the mea culpa on his, he looks like he's in a fucking hut, and we'll show it to you here in a second.
It's so difficult to reflect on the darkest times in your life. Sometimes you gotta do that. I was up. I mean, I hit rock bottom. But I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video.
I mean, look at him. I mean, he's giving a mea culpa. I'm so sorry. It's a public relations thing. He at that time he was doing that. I mean, so he didn't talk to any lawyers about making that statement. I don't know why the fuck that was so stupid, especially in light of everything that was coming down the pike, right? So, he admitted that he did something wrong in that video. So I would be shocked if that didn't come into trial. I don't know if it did or not, but he is such a damaged client or defendant. I just don't know how, you want to keep your client off the stand if at all possible. But when you have he said, she said, it's my practice to have my client normally testify, because if he doesn't testify, they only hear one story. And you can't necessarily destroy somebody on cross-examination if they're compelling. Like Cassie Ventura was compelling. You watch that video and then hear her talk, and then other people corroborated what she had to say. Compelling stuff. Mr. Diddy, isn't it true that he had over 1,000 bottles of baby oil? And you go on and on and on and pound him on cross-examination. The decision to have him not testify was the right decision. No question in my mind. But what do they do in their closing? They're going to talk about consent. They're going to talk about all kinds of other things. You shouldn't believe this person. You shouldn't believe that person. This case is politically motivated. The government in this case only showed you what they wanted you to see. That's the kind of stuff you're going to hear. And it's all bullshit. Let's just call a spade a spade. Was there any challenge to the drugs? No. Was there any challenge that people came in from out of state? No. Was there any challenge that people got paid to have sex with Cassie from out of state? No. So those overt acts are there. And so the defense is just going to have to try to, punch back at the state's closing. They're going to address. But guess what? After the defense is done, then the state gets the government gets another opportunity to do a rebuttal. The government goes first, the defense goes second, and the government goes last. So they have the first and the last word. And that's the way it is in every criminal case. Then then the case goes to the jury and they read the instructions. And I just read you just a snippet of the kind of instructions that they're going to get. And this RICO is so fucking easy to prove. It is so vague. It is so broad. And it's done that way intentionally. And really because it's to get the higher ups in an organization. It was created for the mob. And the mob, what did the mob have between everybody? Buffers, right? They could never get to the mob. Well, now this organization is doing all this shit and you're up here, but you're associated with that organization, you're done. So that's why it's really easy. And they only have to prove one of these overt acts. But they have hundreds and hundreds of exhibits. They've got plenty of witnesses testifying, people that were close to Combs, people that were corroborating Cassie, people that, didn't really have a motivation to lie. What's Cassie's motivation to lie now? She's been paid $20 million. We found that out. What's her motivation to lie now? She said she still loved him. But she's a fucking victim. She's an absolute 100% victim in this case. I know some people say free Diddy and, you're biased and, I just call it like I see it. If the government hasn't proven their case, I would absolutely be on the side of the defense. And I'm not picking a side. I'm just trying to give you an accurate vision of where we're at in this case. And so what the defense has to argue is not that he's innocent, right? Because we don't have that in this country. Some countries have, I think it's Scotland's got guilty, innocent, and not proven or something like that. And we don't have that. We just have it guilty or not guilty. And it's guilty beyond the reasonable doubt. And how much beyond a reasonable doubt, the instruction will say the amount of care one would use in their most important of affairs. The amount of doubt that it would cause somebody to hesitate. And I always tell a jury, there's no mathematical formula to how far beyond a reasonable doubt we're talking about, but it's got to be pretty darn sure. And at the end of the day, the jury is the one that decide exactly. There's no instruction as to how far it is. And so they have a lot of power. The evidence in this case, I think, is pretty overwhelming. And the defense really has their work cut out for them. So you can't have defense, they didn't put on a case, so you can't hold it against them. And so the defense is really just punching up just trying to say this person's not credible. Look at the big picture here. And they're going to point out specific instances where Cassie Ventura had said, "I love you. I can't wait for the freakoffs," that kind of stuff. But that doesn't negate the drugs, does it? That doesn't negate the guy coming in from out of town to fuck her. It just doesn't. So then the case goes to the jury. And when the case goes to the jury, the judge reads the instructions. And then they deliberate. So what's your guess on how long it's going to be? What's your guess? I can tell you in the last case that I tried, the jury was out for 5 days. When you have a 7-week trial, I suspect the jury's going to be out for a little while, at least 2 to 3 days. And one of the things you're going to want to look for is the jury will ask questions if they want to see a particular piece of evidence. Here's the other thing. In the old days, we used to use videotape, right? Fucking videotape. And you didn't send that back with the jury. If they wanted to see the interview or whatever was on the tape, everybody had to assemble in the courtroom. And then the lawyers had to be there, the client had to be there, the prosecutor's got to be there, the jury's there. All right, now put the tape in and that's tape. We always say, I'm going to tape this. No, we don't use tape anymore. So nowadays, they give them a laptop, a blank laptop, and usually with a thumb drive that's got all the exhibits on it. And so then they can do that in the jury room. But look for this. Look for news when a jury has a question, because the questions oftentimes are something that will give you an idea of where they're at, where their head's at. A lot of times they'll ask if they can read back testimony, and they don't allow that. Can you read back the testimony of so-and-so? Or they'll have questions about the instructions. That's especially instructive, because if they talk about the instructions, guess what? They're focusing on a particular piece of evidence related to those instructions. So when you look at this whole thing in its entirety, you've got the government presenting, all these witnesses. You got Cassie, you got her mom, you got assistants, you got hookers, male hookers. Who wants to watch somebody fuck their girlfriend? No. Sorry. I know some people are into that kind of stuff. Not me. It is just amazing to me. The government's a patient entity, right? And so they win most of their cases, like 96 or 7% of their cases. Stat is really high. And why do they do that? Well, number one, they have the power of the FBI. They have the power of the DEA. They have the power of the U.S. Marshal Service. They have the power of the Department of Justice. They've got really unlimited resources, and they can be patient. And I guarantee you they were patient with Diddy. You watch how this thing unfolds, because the jury's going to get the case, and once they decide, the judge will read the verdict, right? And when the judge reads the verdict, oh my God, even if you're not involved, your palms are sweaty, your heart is pounding. It's a very stressful time. If he's found guilty, there's so many aggravating factors. The torture, the physical assaults, the extended period of time over which this happened, and so I haven't actually calculated his guidelines, but I think they're going to be like 30 to life, if I'm not mistaken. The sex trafficking charges alone might carry a 15-year mandatory minimum. The stakes are really, 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 really high for the Diddler, and I wish him well. I don't have anything against Sean Diddy Combs. I don't. I call him the Diddler because this shit is just fucking gross. I just don't know how you let somebody fuck your girlfriend. Hey, by the way, go do this and let me watch. Oh, and by the way, when you're out this afternoon at the supermarket, can you pick up 450 bottles of baby oil? Fucking A. When you're out at Costco, go get me a 55-gallon drum of baby oil, because I want to get slippery tonight. Fucking A. So Robert just mentioned that, some of the hotel bills for repairs are like $60,000 because it's like oil everywhere.
Photos of Diddy's freakoff damage in multiple hotels has just been released. And now we're even seeing the receipt of damages from the freakoffs at the Intercontinental Hotel of $46,000. This is some of the photos from the many photos entered into evidence of Diddy's freak-off damage that he would occur in these hotel rooms. And right here, that's a whole rug wrapped up in towels and sheets.
I don't... You know, you want to get your freak on? Great. You want to fuck with people and hurt people and put them in harm's way? Not great. So, all right. So that's our little thing. And so I want to give a shout out to some of you. I don't know who sent this stuff, but somebody sent me a gavel. Overruled. Somebody sent me, I think this all came from the same person. I'm not sure. Look at this. I mean, people are sending me stuff left and right. And it's just kind of crazy. I got a pair of Clover cufflinks. I got a Clover tie pin or a lapel pin. And you know, I've gotten some other things. Somebody sent me a plaque with Michael's name on it. I really appreciate that. And I just got a letter this morning. This is from Shelby. Shelby writes about just about her, you know, validating her feelings. She's dealing with her husband who's dealing with a fentanyl addiction. And, you know, and anybody that's dealing with addiction, you know what I dealt with for 12 years. You know, I loved my son, but fucking drugs took him from me. There was about 4 years where we didn't, when he was in college and he was in a sober program. You know, Augsburg College here in Minneapolis has got a program called Step Up. Fucking amazing program. He was sober that whole time, got straight A's. And I highly recommend it. But if you're struggling with addiction yourself, quit fucking lying to yourself. Quit lying to the people around you. Be a good person. Or get some help. And if you're dealing with somebody that's struggling from addiction, don't give up on them. Don't give up on them. Especially if they're your child. Don't give up on them. Okay? Oh, it fucking gets me every time. Anyway, so I appreciate the sentiments from everybody. And, you know, I'm just lucky to have the support of my fiance, my friends and family. And I don't know if I could do it without them. So go to askalawyer.com. Make sure you subscribe to this channel because if you don't, you're not my friend. I'm just joking, of course. Subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook. Get on Facebook. We're growing that platform as well. Probably going to start posting some older videos on so you can go back to Facebook and see some of our hits, as we call them. Isn't that what you kids in the business call them? Hits? No, I'm kidding. And so sign up for Patreon, and we'll see you next time. Oh, and go to CLR Bruce Rivers for all your merch needs. And if you ordered something, it's on its way. Nick got in a car accident, and his car, he's without a car, so we're getting him a car. We'll see you next time on Criminal Lawyer React.
Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. 23-hour lockdown, please, is at my God.